Greetings friends. Thanks for stopping by for a visit. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe.
I don't usually post, and I sure as hell don't usually post about something like this. But I haven't slept right in months, and my wife says I mutter to myself now, like I'm taking inventory of things only I can see. I'm a late 50s guy, long in the tooth for internet confessionals, and I know how this will sound, crazy or lonely or like I want attention. I don't. If anything, I want the opposite. I want to move on, to get the hum in my head to quiet down. But I keep thinking maybe if I put in writing, if I get the story out of my chest, maybe it'll leave enough space in there for real air again. I work at a nuclear plant. I'm not going to say where, because one, I still like my job, and two, some of the folks I work with are good people who don't deserve to get dragged into my possible breakdown. Nuclear engineer is what my badge says, which sounds fancier than it is. It means lots of long shifts monitoring systems that aren't allowed to fail, lots of redundancy, lots of checklists and coffee that tastes like warm cardboard. The place itself, if you've never been, is a weird sort of symphony of steady noise, fans, pumps, the steady tick of instrumentation, a bass note of power. People think nuclear is all danger and glowing goo, but the truth is it's mostly paperwork and preventative maintenance. When things are normal, the plant feels like a big animal asleep. You get used to its breathing. I've been there long enough to know the rhythms. I can tell you when a bearing somewhere on the B loop is about to start complaining just by the tone of a motor 2 floors away. I can tell you which operator has a new baby by how slow he drinks his second coffee, savoring the only quiet he'll get. There's comfort in that predictability, even in the fear. You do a job like this long enough and you get superstitious in a practical way. Never say slow night, always pat the gasket bucket twice, never joke about meltdown. It's half habit, half respect. The first time I saw anything I'd call an orb, it didn't even register as that. It was late, mid-spring. I remember because the lights in the parking lot were full of those moths that looked like scraps of tissue paper swirling. My shift was swing, and the day crew had had some trouble with one of the auxiliary pumps burping errors. I'd gone out to the catwalk, above one of the service corridors, to clear my head. The plant is a maze of steel and concrete and bright caution paint. But there are these sight lines, too, places where you can stand and look down a long run of pipes and shadow and feel like the building is a spine. I like those spots. They calm me down. So I'm on the catwalk, leaning on the rail, and there's this smear of light, not like the hard glare you get off stainless under fluorescence, and not like a reflection. It was hanging about halfway down the corridor at the level of a man's head, just off center line. It was subtle, more like someone breathing on the air than switching on a bulb. If I blinked harder or rubbed my eyes, I might have written off. And yeah, I did both. It didn't go away. It didn't get stronger either. It just sort of hovered, soft around the edges. I thought maybe there was steam mixing weird with dust. God knows there's always dust in those overheads. And made a mental note to tell maintenance to check for pinhole leaks on that line. I'd forgotten about it by the time I got back to the control room. You see a lot of odd visual junk when you've been under artificial light for 12 hours straight. I chalked it up to that. Next night, though, I'm in a different part of the building doing a walk down, and damned if I don't see another little bloom of light. This one was off the corner where the concrete meets the bulkhead. It pulsed. No, that's not the word. It swelled, like a jellyfish does. It wasn't bright. You wouldn't have noticed it if you weren't looking right at it. And even then it would have been easy to tell yourself it was your eyes being tired. I stood there holding my breath, counting slow, trying to see if it lined up with the overhead fans. It didn't. It drifted a few inches and then shrank to nothing quick as a held breath let go. I said, okay, that's odd, and moved on. There's a kind of quiet pact among night shift people. You don't spook each other if you don't have to. We work around machines that don't forgive you for being jumpy. So I didn't say anything. But later in the break room, I heard one of the younger techs mutter that he was sick of the ghost lights. He said it like a joke, but I watched his eyes and he wasn't really joking. Another guy told him to shut up, and everybody laughed the way men laugh when they're all a hair too tired. The coffee machine sputtered. Someone made a crack about Chernobyls, and that was that. Still, the word stuck. Ghost lights. I started noticing them more after that, though more might just mean I started looking. If you stare into the dark long enough, you'll conjure shapes that aren't there. But these weren't shapes. They were spheres, I guess, the size of a golf ball to a grapefruit. They didn't light the space around them like a flashlight would. And when they moved, they didn't cast shadows. If I put my hand near one, yes, I did, because curiosity will get a man before fear does. I could feel a little tingle in my skin, like the air before a hard thunderstorm. Static, maybe, or nerves. Hard to say. Once, up on the catwalk over the turbine hall, I watched one slide along the edge of the guardrail, keeping exact pace with my walking. It was faint as a memory, and I had to keep my eyes soft to see it. But there it was, gliding like a soap bubble. I tried to outpace it, and it matched me. I stopped and it stopped. I reached out, slow. It receded a hair, then held steady. The hall below me roared like always, the big machine exhaling in a long, patient sigh. When I finally broke and looked directly, hard focus, the thing vanished. Not zipped away. It just wasn't there. A sane person might say, right there, go get your eyes checked. And I did, actually. The plant nurse sent me to an optometrist about 2 weeks into this because I've been squinting at the SCADA screens like a mule. My prescription had shifted, middle-aged eyesight doing what it does. And the doc told me to stop staring at blue light in the dark like a teenager. I bought better readers. It didn't change anything. Another night, the crew was shutting down a line for scheduled maintenance. Nothing unusual, just a dance we all know. Tag out, verify, double verify. I'm doc happy by nature, so I was doing my last checks when I saw one of the orbs right at the interface of a gasket, just hanging there like it was tasting the seam. The hair on the back of my neck got up. I waved my hand to the space where it was slow, 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 and my palm prickled like I dragged it across a cheap sweater. The orb didn't pop or smear or anything. It backed away a few inches. I could almost feel it evaluating me. That's a dumb word, I know. I'm trying to be honest here, and the honest part is I felt seen by something that shouldn't have eyes. I didn't tell anyone about that one. I went home and fell asleep at the kitchen table with my hand in a bowl of cold water because I couldn't shake the sting. My wife asked what the hell I was doing, and I told her I'd nicked myself with a soldering iron, which I don't even use at work. She looked at me like she wanted to ask more, then didn't. She's good at not pushing. We've been married long enough for her to recognize when I'm wrestling with something, and to trust I'll bring it up when I can name it. I'm naming it now, much too late. Some of you are going to tell me I was seeing St. Elmo's fire or ball lightning, or some odd ionization thing. I've read the articles too. I went down all the rabbit holes people go down when they don't want to feel alone in a weirdness. Thing is, the building environment is controlled, and humidity and pressure and temperature aren't just whatever. If it was a neat little edge case physics trick, I think we'd have caught it in our logs. We log everything. The instruments would have snitched. They didn't. At least, not then. You want to know the moment it stopped being a private lunacy? It was early summer. Heat makes the plant carry itself differently, like an old horse in July. I was on days, rare for me, and coming out of the back corridor near an access door nobody uses unless there's work off the east pad. From behind a heavy door window, I saw, plain as church glass, a sphere of light about as big as a child's head drifting through the space outside, slow as leaves in a pond. This wasn't inside. Mind you, this was out in the real air, where the sunlight hits everything hard and real. The orb was there for maybe 5, 6 seconds. It wasn't bright against the day, but it was definite. It moved toward the door and then, just before it should have hit the glass, it slid up and over like it belonged to a different set of rules. I stood there with my hand on the push bar and didn't push. A minute later, one of the maintenance guys came hustling around the corner with a rag in a bag and said, "You catch the weird light?" Thought I was getting a migraine. He said it offhand, like he didn't want it to be a thing. I swallowed and said, "Yeah." We stared out the window together for a while and didn't see anything else. He shrugged. And then he told me he had a busted coolant hose on a portable and left me there with my heart banging like I'd run. That was the first time someone else said it, without a joke in his voice. Over the next couple weeks, little comments cropped up. Not a lot. Nobody wanted to be first. Not really, but enough. Someone muttered in the locker room about the sprites. Another guy, ex-Navy, the kind of unflappable that makes everyone else look fidgety, asked me real low if I'd seen the balls. When I nodded, he stared at me just a fraction too long, like he was calibrating something inside himself. You could feel it getting named, even if nobody wanted to say the name out loud. The plant took on this charged feeling, like before a storm. The humor got darker in the break room. People stared a little too long past each other's shoulders into the corners of the ceiling. I tried to be a good scientist about it. I started making notes when I saw one. Time, location, rough humidity, anything unusual in the system. I never wrote orb because I couldn't make myself put that down. I'd write anomaly, where I'd draw a little circle only I'd understand. The pattern, if there was one, was slippery. Nights, yes, but not only nights. Cooler areas, sure, but sometimes a hot corner would harbor a faint glow like a fox in brush. A few times I watched one float along a wall seen from the corner of my eye, and when I would turn my head it would be gone. I caught myself trying to sneak glances the way you do with wildlife. Move your head in a slow arc, don't stare straight on. One thing, and I'm not proud to admit I tested this. If you whistle low, some of them seem to take notice. Not all, not every time, but a handful of times. When the plant was loud around me, and I wanted to see if it was my imagination, I'd breathe in and do that low, steady two-note whistle I use for the dog. Once, in the corridor by the old service elevator, a glow swelled from nothing and hovered a good yard from my face like it was waiting to see what I'd do. I stood there whistling like an idiot at a light no one else would have believed in. When I stopped, it drifted backwards into the air like it had never been there. I went back to the control room and deleted what I'd been typing and started over and got it all wrong. If you're rolling your eyes, believe me, I would be too. Other than the eye doctor, I didn't tell anyone outside work. What would I even say? Honey, the lights at work are acting like pets. My daughter's got 2 kids and a mortgage and no time for old man's musings. My son would just ask me if I'm still taking my statin. I told myself it was stress. I told myself if it became dangerous, the instruments would tell us before my eyes ever could. That's how we're taught to think. Trust the gauges, not your gut. Except, the gut keeps score. There's a steel door that leads out to the platform overlooking one of the cooling towers. You can stand there and feel the big damp breath of the place wash up over you, and for a few minutes your head clears. I went out there a lot that month. One evening, the sun low and the sky turned that kind of nickel blue, I saw, not one, not two, a scatter of pale point hovering over the tower mouth, like someone had shaken out a fistful of dull pearls and they decided to hang there. I didn't blink. I didn't even breathe at first. They weren't bright, not like anything Hollywood would bother filming, but they were real, and they held formation the way starlings do when they're thinking about turning. A moment later, they dispersed, each taking a slightly different vector, and faded into the air like breath in cold. I leaned on the rail until my hands hurt. When I came back in, a couple of the operators were staring at me too carefully. I asked if everything was fine, and one of them, a woman half my age with a calm that had soothed me more than once, said, "You look like you saw a ghost." I told her I just needed some air. She nodded. Later that night she asked me, quietly, if I'd noticed any visual disturbances out by the towers, and I said, as professional as I could, "Define disturbances." She didn't smile. "Lights." We looked at each other a long second. I said, "Yes." She breathed out through her nose like she was letting a bad secret go. "Okay," she said. "Okay." We didn't tell the supervisor. Not then. Not because we were trying to hide anything. I want that clear. But because how do you escalate? I saw something I can't prove and it scares me, in a place where everything is supposed to be provable. You don't. You keep your head down. You double-check the logs. Triple-check the interlocks. Make sure everyone goes home with all 10 fingers. You tell yourself it's nothing until you can't. If the story stayed like that, private oddities, water cooler jokes, a handful of grown adults being sheepish about feeling watched, it wouldn't be a story. It'd be a man getting old and seeing things. The thing is, it didn't stay that small. The tone in the building changed. The instruments didn't at first, but the people did. Guys who'd never been jumpy caught themselves pausing at doorways, like they were waiting for a thing to pass. The break room TV, which normally ran old ball games and weather, got switched to one of those looping fish tank channels because anything else felt too loud. There were more headaches, more I didn't sleep and must be allergies. You can call that mass suggestion or cabin fever. Maybe, like me, everyone was feeling a subtle pressure in the air, like something had tilted, and we hadn't caught up to it yet. The last night of what I'm calling the quiet phase, I was alone in a stairwell between levels. The stairwells are concrete and echo your footsteps back at you, so you always feel like someone's following. Halfway down, the light above me did its little fluorescent stutter, and a soft glow bloomed in the landing below, about the size of a melon, hazy around the edges, steady in the center. It hung there at eye level as I came down, and I stopped one step above it. I could see the texture of the cinder block through it, like looking through frosted glass. There was a taste in my mouth like pennies. I said, out loud because it felt right, "Okay?" I don't know who I was talking to. The orb trembled in place, not vibration, more like a tiny inhalation, and then slid sideways to the handrail and was gone. I stood there until my legs started to shake. Then I went down and touched the spot in the air where it had been like an idiot trying to pet warm emptiness. When I opened the door at the bottom of the stairs, 2 co-workers were coming down the hall. They both looked a fraction to the left of my face, like they were seeing if something followed me out. One of them asked if I was headed to the break room. "Yeah," I said. He nodded. The other one rubbed his arms like he was cold. We didn't say the word. We didn't have to. It was circling between us, a shape we were pretending not to trace. I wish I could tell you that's where it stopped, that it stayed this private little haunting of grown men who should have known better. But I wouldn't be writing all this if that was the case. The next week, other people outside our crew, started noticing. The guy at the gate, for one, swore he saw something glide past his window that wasn't a reflection off a windshield. A contractor on a scaffolding crew yelled and nearly fell because a light ran right into my face. The whispers got louder. On my days off, I caught myself scanning corners in the grocery store, looking for soft edges. I started sitting with my back to walls again, like I used to when I was a younger man who'd learned the hard way to watch his surroundings. Old habits came back quick, and then we had our first, I guess you'd call it, incident. Not catastrophic, not anything that would make the 6 o'clock news, just enough to make everyone stop pretending. It wasn't only ours anymore, only the night shifts. It was everyone's. The orbs got bolder, but we got worse at ignoring. Maybe both. That's when we stopped laughing in the break room. That's when the instrument hiccups started lining up with the sightings. That's when the word report got said out loud, which is where the next part starts, I guess. We went from a handful of tired people seeing odd little lights to a building full of adults trying to act normal, while something bright and quiet and absolutely not normal floated where it pleased. When the whispers turned into actual conversations, everything shifted. Until then, I could tell myself I was tired, maybe even losing it a bit. But once you start seeing that same quiet recognition in other people's eyes, the ground tilts. The first official moment, if you want to call it that, came from a guy named Marcus, big ex-Marine, 20 years younger than me, the kind of man you'd expect to laugh in the face of anything supernatural. We were doing checks in one of the auxiliary corridors when he froze up and said, "You see that?" I asked what he meant. He pointed, and there it was, an orb, faint but real, sliding across the corner where pipe met wall. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then he muttered, "Thought I was losing my goddamn mind." That broke something open. Over the next week, little admissions started trickling out. A woman from the lab swore one drifted right over her instruments, and her readings glitched for 30 seconds straight. The gate guard said he saw 2 floating just outside the perimeter fence. Another guy from maintenance mentioned one followed him down a hallway like it wanted something. The more people admitted it, the more it happened, or maybe the more we allowed ourselves to see. Either way, the sightings multiplied. They weren't every second, but they weren't rare anymore either. And then came the first time one touched somebody. It was a Thursday, mid-shift. One of the younger guys, Scott, was doing a routine walk down when he walked right into an orb. He didn't see it. It drifted from the side. The rest of us did, though. It touched his temple, and he dropped like a stone. We thought heart attack at first. Russian Mehmed slapped AD pads on him. He came back quick, breathing, pulse fine, but he was out cold for hours. When he woke up, he kept saying it was cold inside, over and over until they sedated him. That rattled everyone. The jokes dried up after that. The control room started recording anomalies, instrumentation spiking, alarms going off without reason. You'd hear static in the intercom, like someone was whispering. We checked everything twice, then 3 times. The log showed errors, but the errors never lined up clean, like the machines were stuttering the way we were. One of the supervisors tried to downplay it. He said we were just primed to see patterns. But you can't tell 20 trained engineers and operators that they're all hallucinating the same floating lights. Not when those lights are showing up on cameras. 2. Yeah, one night security pulled up footage from the turbine hall. Clear as day, 2 orbs drifted across the frame. They weren't bright, but they were there. You could see them sliding along, then vanishing behind a column. The next morning the footage was gone. File corruption, they said. Nobody bought it. At that point, we all knew this wasn't just us. It was bigger. And for the first time in my career, I felt genuinely unsafe at the plant. The orbs escalated fast after that. Within a week, they weren't shy anymore. One evening I walked into the turbine hall, and there were at least a dozen drifting overhead, like lazy balloons at a funeral. They pulsed faintly, colors shifting, soft blues, dim oranges. No heat, no glow cast on the floor, but real all the same. The sound in the room changed too. The turbine is normally a steady roar, but with those things above me, it felt muffled, like listening through cotton. I swear I heard a low hum under it, something not mechanical, like they were singing in a register too low to catch clean. That same night, the control panels went haywire, lights blinking, readings fluctuating. For 20 minutes, we couldn't get stable numbers. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The orbs vanished, and everything returned to normal. The next day, FAA called, not to us directly, but to management. Pilots had reported aerial anomalies near restricted airspace above the plant, little glowing spheres tracking their flight paths. That got serious attention. You don't ignore pilot reports, not around a nuclear site. Within 48 hours, military guys showed up, not in uniform, civvies, unmarked trucks. The whole were not here look. They met with the site director behind closed doors. Rumors spread fast. Some folks swore the military had already known about the orbs, that we were just one of many hot sites. The orbs didn't stop. If anything, they got bolder. They'd float through walls into control room, hang for a few seconds, then blink out. They never made a sound, but the static in the air was undeniable. A tech tried to snap a picture on his phone once. The whole screen glitched into colored lines, then rebooted. By the second week, the whole plant was on edge. Guys quit mid-shift. Others begged for reassignment. I kept telling myself I'd stick it out, partly because I needed the job, partly because I wanted answers. But deep down, I was scared. Not a meltdown or failure. Those are things you can quantify. I was scared of being in the presence of something that didn't belong to our world at all. Then one morning, they called us into the auditorium. Management, plus a couple of the government types. They handed us NDAs. No explanation, just read, sign, and don't talk. Most of us signed. You don't mess with clearance at a nuclear facility. You want to keep your job. You sign. After the orbs? Gone. Vanished. Almost overnight. For a week they'd been everywhere. Then suddenly, nothing. The halls were empty again, the machine steady, the night shift boring. The air felt lighter, like someone had opened a window, but the silence was worse. The military guys hung around for a few days, then left, Unmarked trucks rolled out at midnight. The cameras were replaced. Logs were scrubbed. It was like someone erased a week from the record. Everyone acted relieved. People laughed again, joked about collective migraines. Management told us it was resolved and that we should move on. But the looks in their eyes, haunted, hollow, told another story. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt watched. Like the orbs hadn't disappeared. They'd just gone invisible. Every corner, every shadow, I expected to see one hovering there, waiting. For a while, nothing happened. Weeks passed. The plant went back to its rhythms. People stopped talking about it. But I couldn't, not after what I'd seen. And then, one night at home, it started again. It was late. My wife was asleep. I was sitting on the back porch, nursing a beer and listening to the crickets. For a while it was peace, the kind you forget exists after long shifts. Then I saw it, a faint light at the edge of the yard, hovering low to the ground, round, pulsing. I froze. My first thought was neighbor's flashlight, but it wasn't. It floated too smoothly, too steady. It drifted closer, maybe 10 feet from where I sat. Not fast, not threatening, just present, like it was making sure I saw it. My skin prickled the same way it had at the plant. That metallic taste filled my mouth. Then it blinked out. Since then, they've come back. Not every night, not even every week, but often enough. Sometimes it's one, hanging outside the bedroom window until I blink. Sometimes two, drifting across the garage like curious fish. Once I woke at 3 a.m. to see one hovering at the foot of the bed. By the time I sat up, it was gone. I haven't told my wife. I don't want her to think I'm losing my mind. I tell myself it's just my imagination, but I know better. They're real, and they followed me home. I don't know why. Maybe because I paid them too much attention. Maybe because I acknowledged them out loud. Or maybe they attach themselves to people the way static clings to cloth. I don't know what they want. They've never hurt me. Not really, but their presence is enough. I feel them like a weight in my chest, a hum in my bones. Sometimes I think they're waiting for something. Sometimes I think they're just watching. And that's the part that keeps me up most nights. The idea that I'm a test subject who doesn't even know the test. That whatever those things were doing at the plant, they're not finished. Not with me. Not with us. I know how this sounds. I'm just some old guy rambling on the internet about lights in the dark. You don't have to believe me. Hell, I wish I didn't believe me. But if you ever see one, soft, round, glowing at the edge of your vision, don't whistle to it. Don't acknowledge it. Just walk away. Because once it knows you can see it, once it knows you're aware, it might follow you home too. I know this sounds like a campfire story or some kind of LARP, but it isn't. I'm posting this because I honestly don't know what else to do. If anyone out there, especially folks who work in power plants, restricted facilities, or anywhere with high security has seen anything even remotely like what I've described, please comment or DM me. Even if it was years ago, even if you think it was nothing, I don't care about ridicule at this point. I just want to know I'm not the only one. TLDR, I'm a nuclear engineer in my 50s. At the plant, me and my co-workers started seeing strange glowing orbs that grew more frequent and even interfered with equipment. The FAA and military got involved, forced us to sign NDAs, and then the orbs vanished at the plant. But a few weeks later, they started appearing around my house. They don't hurt me, but they watch. And once you acknowledge them, they don't leave you alone.
Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories like these, please like and subscribe.